So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about the finer points of the composite loop. Kind of, moreover, talking about the actual volumes of what makes a shoulder, the volumes of what makes a hackle, the required amount of turns, the area that one needs to create a quality shoulder and a quality accent hackle, or a full forward hackle. And I've seen so many cool examples from people and been asked a lot of the same questions, so I hope this kind of addresses those questions. The thing that I really focus on when I do my composite loops is I focus on keeping any of the dubbing materials that I use to a minimum and a controlled desired length. So for example, like Senyo Fusion dubs, all of these dubbings, I love them. The actual working length of the material is roughly around an inch, inch and an eighth, inch and a quarter. And so what I do with this is I pull it out until the ends are matched up, and I generally cut it in half. And I'll use that as like the substrate or the scrim for the composite loops. And other materials like ice dub, for example, a lot of these dubbings you can do the same thing and pull them out to a basic length because they vary greatly. And break them off or cut them off to a desired length, or use them at full length for larger, fuller shoulders. But it's the key here, and what we want to illustrate is that just how much less is more, and how minimal a shoulder can be, and using a certain types of materials in the shoulders in combination can create minimal, very beautiful effects that are super functional as well. I mean, they're mind-boggling how minimal they can be and still create an outstanding shoulder. Better than a big wad of seal fur or polar bear. That's for sure. At least in my opinion. The three major components would be the substrate, or the scrim, the first layer of dubbing, which is basically the Velcro of the whole thing. It gives you a place to build the elements of the composite hackle on. And it's the carrier from that point, and it's also accent. It's accent based on if you're going to have it contrast or have it accentuate the same colors. And then there's the substance in it, which is either more synthetic materials or Angora goat or Arctic fox, whatever you choose to put in there. In my case, I like lots of synthetic materials. That substance is the predator wrap, the polar flash, the things that I want to make a shoulder out of. And then of course you add the swimmy side of it, and that can be in a hackle all by itself, which is you can use Arctic fox, you can use ostrich, you can use rhea. I of course prefer ostrich. That's the swimmy element. You can add a buggy element, which is pieces like turkey flats, like thumbed out or strung out pieces of Amherst. So they're spaced out correctly in there, and you can add that as an element or substance inside of the composite loop, a swimmy element, or more, a buggier element amongst a swimmier element. This would just be what you'd call an accent hackle or an accent shoulder. So I put my beautiful bright orange crystal hackle down. I'm going to put some dubbing wax on this. 5 inches is about the basic length, and it's really easy to make them too long, and there's a lot of reasons for making them 5. They spin up faster. They're a lot easier to bridge the gaps and pick things apart. I don't know how big your hands are, but my hands aren't that big, and so shouldn't be that big. And the longer they are, the more you have to spin up, the less chance you get a good compressed spun hackle, as they should be. Little pinches. I make myself grab little tiny bats of material, and these little bats of material end up giving me some idea of how long they are. So with that pulled out of the bag, so I just change hands and pull it, and now I've got that, stack it on top of it, and I do it again and just get the stragglers out and find a basic length. So now we have a basic length of that material. Take my scissors. I'm just going to cut this in half. And that portion would be the scrim for the shoulder. And this portion that partially stuck to my thumb, here's the other half of that. This could be the top of this one if I choose the top of the stack, or it could be the bottom for the forward hackle. And the assembly of this one, of course, is going to be, I'm going to set this aside for other, and this will be our shoulder. And the truth is I only need about that much. These guys are going over here. So looking at that, it's quite thin. This is angel hair. As you can see, it's stuck there, which is great. So let's cut that off. Let's cut about 1 inch worth. Set that aside. All I did is just pulled that 1 inch worth slightly apart. I'm going to just stick it right on here. And you can see how the hackle is the first layer. See how that works. The first layer is just over the center line, roughly 1/8 of an inch, and most of the hackle is protruding that way. That'll be the direction of my assembly, or the side of all the non-cut side. Excuse me.
So you just put it right on top?
Yep, I just laid that right on top. 50-50. There's 50% on that side of the center line, 50% on that side. And then what I like here is this is some of the Senyo Predator wrap. It's 1 inch-ish, basically, cut off of the braid. That's what I consider to be a good filler volume. And that's what I'm using this for exactly, is the filler. Honestly, I love the Bart effect. It's just gorgeous. And it makes exceptional volume filler in these hackles. So that's about 3/4 of an inch. It's fairly short. But this back hackle needs to be just that, kind of short and stout. Cut that off. Set that aside. I just switch hands with it and then spread it out. And if you want, you can switch hands again. It's all just practice in material handling, really. Okay, this is going to go on here, 50-50. It's right there. There's a couple stragglers down there, no big deal. Actually, now we'll use a portion of this. Very little. I mean, literally just a veil of material right over the top of that.
What was that?
It was the other portion, the cut half of the flame fusion dub.
Okay. What does kind of each part of that loop, that assembly do?
So looking at the way it's built up, you've got some excellent color and flash in here. But what's neat about this material too is that the fusion dub is that it has kind of an Angora goat effect. It's a fairly stiff synthetic material and a really nice blend, but it also almost always has this very fiery, like, cut finished edge to it, which I like a lot. So once I cut it in half, I end up with nice square butt ends, and I can use that for stacks on the assembly, knowing that I'll get this nice finish wispy. So this material, the Predator wrap, this specific Predator wrap, the way that it's printed or something makes it really kinky, super kinky, and it makes an exceptional filler. So once it's spun, it's pretty confused in the loop, and it does a really good job of creating a solid shoulder that doesn't absorb any water. And it has exceptional transparency. I mean, it's just clear barred material. So, and then the combination of your cleared barred material and these beautiful synthetic blends spun together, you end up with this really nice gradually changing orange from super bright to a little bit darker orange and buggier, which is going to translate into the forward part of this fly. And so for me, that's the composition effect. But I mean, you could go, if it was a, you know, if you wanted to, it could be in the same fly. You could use the silver and black with the clear, or the copper and black with the clear, are my other real favorites. And you could use that in there as well. In this case, I like this material as a filler because of how it's printed. It kind of creates a kinkier type effect in the fly and makes a better, smaller material shoulder. And that, of course, will go on the forward part of it. But let's put this in here, spin this out. Okay. So again, just roughly a 5-inch loop. Wax is super important. Keeps things where you put them. Okay, let's pick this up. I was worried about that. That's static from that tape I put on there. Okay, so I just transferred it into the other hand and put it in the loop. Okay, so now that I'm going to force all this together, make the desired space, and then pick it apart. Let it separate it out. I've got my finger in behind it. Part of the reason for the middle finger in the loop, I close the loop down, and then I can keep it closed with my thumb, put my finger in behind, and use it as backing for the picking for this shoulder. And you can use your bodkin to pull things back and forth in the loop, move them back over to this side if you want. It's just a matter of material handling, being patient and seeing how it works. Okay, so I like where that's at. I'm just going to slide this up a little bit. Pull that back. OPST dubbing tool. I slide it in. I pinch it off. I give that a real spin, and then I pull it tight. And I watch it. I'm pretty calculated about how much I spin it, and it's always more than I know I need. And then I usually stop it where I need it to be, or it's generally enough. So just picking down through it right away. And a good toothbrushing, I like to pick things out first. I don't even know if it's really that necessary, but I think on some of the longer shoulders, it is. To get everything out and get down to the thread so you have a nice thin base. Because you are trying to create a hackle, not just some big giant dubbing ball. You want a calculated amount of material. And looking through that, you can see how thin that is. I mean, almost transparent. Okay, let's move this thread forward out of the way. And of course, the moisture. Super important. Find a neutral point in your thread and just part it with your fingers wet. Part it and pinch it. And then I'll go for a little bit more moisture. Part it and pinch it and rock it back and forth a little bit. Make everybody kind of stand to attention where they're going to be, and look at that. It's already a nice little thin hackle. So that big wad has been reduced down to this nice compressed hackle. And the water's really critical to this. And I've discovered that if you do these right, you get the right volume of material in there, you compress them down properly, and then you wind them tightly on the hook, on the shank, in the place that you want them to be. When they dry out, the rebound is what creates the exceptional shoulder. Because this material doesn't want to be flat. And then once it rebounds, even once it gets wet again, it won't go back to this super squishy stuff. It'll just stay full and beautiful. And there's that. Give that 3 turns. So that 1-inch long portion of composite hackle made 3 full turns on that diameter shank, any average diameter shank. So 1 inch equals 3 full turns, and 3 full turns is what I would consider to be, an adequate the ideal shoulder. It's thin, it's transparent, and you can build up the compositions of them and such to, you know, support twin tails or forward hackles. Make big, huge king profiles or, you know, nice little summer stuff. It's just all about the composition of the hackle. Okay. I leave myself a solid 1/4 inch for a fly like this for a shoulder and the forward hackle. And I may put a little dubbing ball as an accent on the backside of this too. But that's all that's really required. And you have a large cone here too, so there's going to be some head finish up and behind that as well. Again, just a nice 5-inch loop. Four and a half, 5 inches. Okay. Just a little wax back here to keep it out of the way while we build this shoulder and forward hackle. Bright red ice UV ice dub. And again, I pull it out, I kind of find the ends, control the volume. And I'll take what I want. That will probably be the dubbing ball. With these styles of flies that have a nice, you know, open body style, I like to have another bright colored accent inside the body, because these transparent materials, that's going to show through really nice, blend really nice with the forward shoulder, just take advantage of all the color we can get. And this is that orange ice dub. You can see I just broke that in half. This will be the substrate for the shoulder. And just spread it out over about 1.5 1.25 inch area. Save that. We'll go straight for the Senyo. Predator wrap, the barred clear. We'll take a solid 1.125 inches worth of that. I pinch them off. I like working in these smaller batches. It allows you to actually pick up the right amount of material and not have an excess. And again, that goes back to controlling the volume and the precision of these things. It'll make it a lot easier for you. So about 1.125 inches, cut that off. And then I'll switch ends and I'll pull this apart. And just enough to make it fan out and be fairly even. And then set it 50-50 on your dubbing scrim. Okay, so there's that part. And then we're going to go with some pink polar flash. Yippee. I love this stuff. And this now is going to create some great transparency and reflection. And this stuff also, once you get it in a composite loop, it kind of curls up. Its natural tendency is to kind of do a little bit of a hard curl. And that hard curl helps create the structure of this shoulder and gives it some incredible appeal as well. But what I've discovered is, or what I'm doing now, is if they kind of are unruly, I take a little water to them, and it tends to straighten them out pretty nice. Help control it for cutting and application. So I'm going to cut these ends, even these ends up a little bit. And it'll be the same length or a little shorter. And you can see the volume. It's a fair little 1/4 inch whack. Set that aside there. Switch hands and spread them out. And get them just the same volume and spread out as the Predator wrap was. Lay them in right where they need to be. Oh, that was cool. Got some serious static going here, man. Okay. And you don't have to worry about spreading them out yet, because once you get the top part of the loop on, or the top part of the composite on here, you can spread them out in the loop. Everything works out real good. Okay, so there's those two, and then I'm going to go with a little copper as well. And that's about 3/4 of an inch piece. Cut off the braid. Even up the ends, kind of. And now this, I'm going to make this a good 1/4 inch shorter. And what this does is this helps create kind of a leaf string effect in the shoulder itself. Switch hands, pick it out. Make it a little bit shorter. And you can taper them down consecutively if you want. And what I tend to do instead of that is shift them over in the loop. And then once it's spun, you end up with these two very different lengths, and those two very different lengths are fairly tapered, and then it creates this really nice leaf spring effect. Okay, so there's that. I'll go with this over the top. I just took the other half of the substrate for this composite loop and put it right over the top, slide it out of the way. There's the shoulder, there's our dubbing ball. Now let's assemble this forward hackle. Forward hackle, I want to use this flame. Love this stuff. Just a nice intentional small pinch of material. Helps dictate the length. Pull it out. Cut it in half. Excuse me, scissors. I like this one.
Could you explain the difference between a hackle and a shoulder?
Okay. The shoulder would have been, traditionally, it'd be your puller bearer and, your other dubbing materials or other shoulder materials that you would combine with a hackle to create the substance behind a nice swimmy hackle. And in this case, we make these stacks of these synthetics to create the shoulder. And the shoulder is this little assembly that's going to go in behind this forward hackle assembly that'll all be assembled in the same loop. And so once we spin down the shoulder, then we'll spin down the hackle. And the shoulder is comprised of all the supporting materials, where the forward hackle is just going to be comprised of a dubbing accent and some ostrich. And it being thin, it'll allow you to, the shoulder will take up most of the space, and then you can control a nice volume and presence of hackled material. Nice little batch of ice dub. Encompassing about 1.5 inches. It's hard to see on that, but it's spread out evenly, 50-50 over the center line. About 1.5 inches long. Okay. And I'd already chosen orange for this. Orange and natural. I like that a lot. Let's see here. And both of these would be good choices. One's a little webbier, and the other one's a little bit shorter webs, more spay-like. Those are pretty long and skinny, so I'm going to go with the long and skinny. Okay, so here's another thing that I've been asked. And when this drab is in its natural position, these are tapering short to long. And a lot of the time, if you want all the tips to be the same length, the way to remedy that is to pull things back down. Pull them back down, and the tips will all line up again. And so when you cut them off of here, I tend to, if I want the tips to all be the same length, I'll pull it all down and say, okay, I want a solid 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches worth of hackle there. And you notice all the tips are tapered off, or all the ends are tapered off, and all the tips are exactly the same, or very close to it. So then I can run back out here and cut them to the length that I want. And then speaking of length over the shoulder, so this is going to be basically where they're tied down, just in front of where my fingernails are. And so then again, they're twice as long as the shoulder I'm going to make. And that's by design. You wouldn't want to capture, you could make some really short shoulder or long shoulder and a short hackle, but if the hackle is twice as long as the shoulder, you get a way better swim and a perfect prop, basically. And you can go a little longer, but too long starts to encompass the back end of the fly, and then you're talking about everything moving together and not the kind of separation I'm looking for here. Okay, so I give these a good pinch, cut them off. And I keep everything nice and tight. I slide my fingers out to the end here. Now, I've spread them out before with the toothbrush, and sometimes it's a good idea. It pulls all the barbules out, and it actually gives them a fairly even division. Get rid of anybody who fell off here, and then I do this thing I call taming them with just a little bit of water, and that'll give them some control. Boof. And they're going to go right in there with roughly a 1/4 inch overlap. And I like a little bit of the ends. And I've tried making them super short, and super short looks really good, but I don't think it gives as much good support to the actual very, very bottom of the tip. So I do try to have about, a 1/4, 3/16 around in there. Okay, and I'm going to use the flame over the top of this. Okay, these guys are, and I could use this flame, this last bit of flame here for the head. Open the loop up so it's open all the way to the bottom, and always remember to put some wraps around the bottom. Close it up when you're doing this. I've talked about that a lot, and I've overlooked it in this video, but a nice amount of wax so things stay where I put them. Okay. Dubbing ball. And again, this is just that red, the bright red UV ice dope. Pulled out and broke in half. I'm going to put it right down here in the very bottom. Split 50-50 and very ball-like. It's stuck down in there. Okay, going for the shoulder. It'll go in right up and next to it. And we notice we have a little bit of a feather out in between. And I kind of like this. I don't mind the shoulders button into the dubbing ball being right behind the shoulder, but the hackle should have just the minutest amount of separation so the two can be separated when you're wetting them down and getting them ready to palmer. Okay, so see how this is kind of slightly slid over? It's perfect because we're going to have a little bit shorter side, a little bit longer side, really nice leaf spring effect. Okay, forward hackle. Open up the loop, just stick that bad boy in there, and right at the edge of the feathers. And you can see there's a little bit of separation there. And it'll get so, and then we'll just stick this in before I pick it up. There's the head material. Okay, so, and again, the length of the loop makes it possible for me to be able to stick my finger up behind all this, all the way up to the dubbing ball. And give this just a poking. I just literally go down through it one time to give it kind of a little basic separation and square it up. And then the same thing with this, with the hackle portion of it. Just stab through, gives it some nice, fairly decent separation. I'm going to compress these just a little tiny bit. So the forward hackle encompasses about 3/4 inch. The back shoulder is going to be about the same to the dubbing ball. So the entire assembly is about 2.5 inches long. Okay, loop in the bottom. Again, I just pinch and spin. And just watch the thing spin up. A little bit more, make me happy, and there you go. And then I start at the top, and I'm nice about it at first. There's no sense in just busting things. It will pick out really nicely. Just slide the pick along the inside of the loop, right down at the base. The Senyo Fusion wrap needs a little convincing because of the varied materials, the flash and stuff in there. You don't want to just break it all off. So I take it out a little bit softer, kind of rock it back and forth a little bit at first. And once it's out, you can see how it's spinning out more. Everybody's in its place. Love it. Okay. And you notice the entire time I picked on that, I have tension on this. I'm just riding on this thing because I know I've got 210 denier thread. It's all been waxed really nicely. It has a proper amount of spin. It's all nice and tight down against it. So let's pick at this a little bit and pull out some of this extra. And that's important to me. I just don't want a bunch of extra material in here that doesn't need to be in here. It allows the assembly to be a lot tighter and more precise. Okay, so there you go. Bam. So let's find a place where parting is possible. Nice neutral point. It's like right in there. Some moisture. And I go for the hackle first. Nicely at first. Find a nice even point. And then pinch. Pull and pinch. Okay. Let's go for the shoulder. And the dubbing ball. You notice how that just pinched. Once you get it wet, you have full control over it. Just like your hair. And then once it dries out, it goes crazy again. So here we go. A little rocking back and forth. And a little bit more moisture. And again, I'm excessive with the moisture. I want the thing to be thin. I want to be able to compress this thing and make it a real quality shoulder. Okay, so I'm going to start back a little bit. And it wants to rock around. And what I do is I kind of direct that with it rolling on my finger right here. And I control the placement of the hackle by pulling up as I wrap forward. So this is a dubbing ball. It needs to be right pretty much on top of itself. Then we go forward hackle. And I'm pulling up a little bit as I start to wrap this forward. I want these guys to lay down with their foot down, not cocked way back. And you could cock them way back by just wrenching them back if you want, but I'm trying to create a nice shoulder here. Okay, so we're right there is 2, and there's our last third turn. Okay, now we're into forward hackle. Nice and tightly wrapped. Right in front of each other. So now we're into the head material and right behind the bead. Good wrap, good hard pull. Four wraps. One whip finish. Now a little love. And I go easy. I go in, rock it back and forth. I don't want to break a bunch of stuff yet until it's, because it's kind of twisted now. It's twisted on top of itself. And I just go back through, pick it out. Okay. And then once they're out, making a couple more laps around it. And the real magic happens when it dries out. I love this. It's like a present. Every time I tie one, I'm like, oh yeah, that's looking good. And then, you get it all brushed out, and you come back after it's all dried out, and it's all poof. It's glorious. Okay. Let's clean out the toothbrush here. Okay. well, I'm going to put a wing on this thing, but I needed to see how long this was going to be. So this brushing forward I find to be super important, especially at this stage. It tends to kind of set this shoulder in a forward attitude, and it gets everything all present, everything picked out and present. Okay, so the reason my thread's still hanging here is because I plan to put a wing on this thing, and more than likely it's going to be purple.